does good policing look like? On one level, that question makes no sense, right? There's no single answer. Officers get involved in a wide variety of very different situations, and good policing is context-specific. On another level, though, that question definitely has an answer. We could identify a set of principles that we could use to evaluate policing in almost any context. Principles that shape the police function itself, what officers do and how they do it, the way that officers view their job, and the way that they relate to community members. I want to show you one police agency's recruitment video. As you watch the video, pay particular attention to the way that it portrays officers, the way that they relate to each other, and to the individuals they're interacting with.
This is the Orange County Sheriff's Academy. You have 6 months to get it right. Do your job. Put your hands up.
We got a 450 fight now. You were en route with the suspect description.
Stop resisting. Stop resisting.
I'll need a unit at 23rd and Balboa.
That video presents one vision of policing, a particular attitude about the role that officers have, the relationship that they have with community members. It offers one answer to the question I asked before. What does good policing look like? I spent a lot of time thinking about that question. For more than 6 years now, I've studied policing as an academic. First as a Clemenco Fellow at Harvard Law School, now as an associate professor here at the University of South Carolina School of Law. My perspective isn't exclusively academic, though. Prior to attending law school, I served for 5 years as an officer with the Tallahassee Police Department. And the lessons I learned there, both from other officers and from my own successes and failures, have informed my research and shaped my views about policing. I've come to believe that there is a better metaphor for policing than what we see in that video, one that represents the highest ideals of the profession. I'm here today to talk about guardian policing. The phrase guardian policing has become something of a buzzword, and that's a little unfortunate because we have a tendency to adopt or criticize buzzwords without really thinking about what they mean. So I'm going to share my understanding of what it means, my vision for what policing can and should be. I'll do that by first talking about what guardian policing is and what it isn't. I'll tell you why it's important, and I'll finish by talking about a couple of things that we can do to make it happen. At its core, guardian policing is a service-oriented approach, one that emphasizes protecting all community members from indignity and harm, including the indignity and harm that can come from policing itself. I am not the first one to talk about guardian policing. That phrase has been promoted by Sue Rahr, a former sheriff of King County, Washington, who now serves as the executive director of the Washington State Criminal Training Commission. When the President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing released its final report, guardian policing featured prominently in its first recommendation. It's been a core part of training for groups like Blue Courage and at police agencies around the country, from Austin, Texas to Kansas City, Missouri, to our own Richland County Sheriff's Office and Columbia Police Department. Over the last few years, guardian policing has been discussed widely in police publications, in the popular media, and in academic articles. In fact, just this week, Justice Quarterly published an empirical analysis that found that guardian policing isn't just semantics, that attitude matters. Of course, we've known that for a long time. Guardian policing is based on a very old approach to policing, one articulated almost 200 years ago. When the first modern police agency was formed in London, constables were given a set of principles known as Peelian principles after British Home Secretary Sir Robert Peel. Those principles reminded officers that they depended on public support. It reminded officers that policing isn't something that can be done to a community, or even in a community. Policing is something that has to be done by a community. As the Pelian principles put it, the police are the public, and the public are the police. Now, officers are tasked with doing a range of things like investigating and enforcing criminal violations that most community members aren't. And to that end, they're uniformed, armed, vested with authority that most community members don't have. That authority is why I'm here today. Officers can invade our privacy. They can take our liberty. They can use force, including deadly force. That authority is what makes it so important, not just for officers to get policing right, but for all of us in society to get policing right. Now, let me be very clear about something. To be guardians, officers have to be able and willing to invade privacy and take liberty. Those actions are sometimes necessary to enforce the law. To be guardians, officers absolutely must be able and willing to use force, including deadly force to protect themselves or others when the situation demands it. Those situations are rare. More than 98% of police encounters don't involve the use or threat of force. More than 99.99% of encounters don't involve the use of deadly force. Still, I would argue that an officer who can't enforce the law or use force when it's required can't serve as a guardian. But that's only one part of policing. As those statistics suggest, guardian officers have to be capable of doing far more. So what does it mean to be a guardian? Well, guardians honor the sanctity of life. Among other things, that means using good tactics and communication skills to avoid conflict when it's possible to do so. When conflict is unavoidable, guardians seek to resolve it without resorting to force. And when they do have to use force, guardians use only what the situation requires. Guardian officers have and show respect for human dignity. The nature of policing will require officers to make arrests, conduct stops, do searches and frisks, but a guardian will do so with an eye towards minimizing, to the extent possible, the potential for humiliation and harm. I was always a little surprised as an officer when someone I had arrested, someone I had taken to jail, said, "Thank you." They were not thanking me for arresting them. That would be a little weird. They were thanking me for doing what I could to make a difficult experience as painless as possible. Guardian officers have empathy. They know and they respect that not everyone has the same perspective on a police encounter that they do. Guardian officers know that something that they do every day, making a traffic stop or responding to a burglary call or frisking a pedestrian, can be an upsetting experience for a community member who may feel confused or angry or powerless. Empathy also means realizing that it is not enough to treat people equally. A young black man may have a very different view of the police and of a police encounter than an older white woman. And guardian officers take those perspectives into account as they calibrate their own actions, reactions, and expectations for that encounter. Empathy doesn't require officers to agree with the individuals that they're interacting with, but it does require them to understand where they're coming from. Guardian officers are patient, and patience takes time. In the arrest context, for example, stuffing someone into handcuffs may take only a few minutes. Talking them into handcuffs may take significantly longer, but for the guardian, that's time well spent. Guardian officers honor the sanctity of life, have and show respect for human dignity, have empathy, and exercise patience. And they do all of those things for everyone they're interacting with. This already happens in my neighborhood. But it needs to be the default everywhere. Guardians know that everyone deserves good policing, without exception or exclusion, from the business owners they chat with to the suspects they arrest. Those are the fundamentals of guardian policing. And like I said before, they're not new. Good officers have been doing exactly what I described since long before I started describing it. And there's good reason for that. The first reason is philosophical. Guardian policing represents the way that a free society wants and expects to be policed. There's also a set of pragmatic reasons, though. Guardian policing makes officers safer and more effective, and it does that while better protecting the safety and civil rights of community members. To understand why it makes officers safer, we need to think at two different levels. First, in the context of an individual encounter. And to explain this, I'm going to need your help. So let's do this. I'm going to divide the room in half. You guys over, right? You're my first half. This is going to be weird, but bear with me. I promise it will make sense. Everyone on this half of the room, go ahead and stand up for me. Yeah, stand up. Awesome. Just think of the stories you'll have to tell your friends. All right, we're going to take our hands, shake our hands out a little bit. We're going to take our hands, we're going to put them up at like a 45-degree angle here, right? Okay, so our hands are up, palms down, 45-degree angle. Now we're going, you can make this sound if you want, but you don't have to. You can go bang, put your fingers down, right? Awesome. Okay, this is our Batman pose. I'm a big Batman fan, such a big Batman fan that what I'd like you to do, and help me out with this last little bit, you've already gotten this far, grab your cape, spin in a circle, and sit back down. Awesome! All right, let's give him a hand. Good job, guys. All right, this half of the room, stand the up now! Stand up now! All right, you're good. It's interesting because not many people stood up. So let's talk about why that happened. When I asked this side of the room for help, right, I was depending on you guys. I was empowering them. And by empowering them, I earned their cooperation. I think it's probably fair to say that you guys did something that you would not have done on your own. Fair? Okay. But when I yelled at this side of the room, I was demanding their compliance. And that's disrespectful, disempowering. All I was asking them to do was stand up. Is that something that you're planning on doing anyway in the next 45 minutes, hour and a half? Of course it is. But not when I told you to do it. Why not? Because no one likes being bossed around, right? Because I surprised you, or maybe scared you, or maybe you were just telling me and each other that I'm not the boss of you, okay? There's another way that Guardian policing can improve safety. We need to think back to the summer of 2014 when a Ferguson police officer fatally shot Michael Brown. In the aftermath of that shooting, two distinct narratives arose. In the first, Michael Brown had violently assaulted the officer and was aggressively approaching a second time when he was shot. In the second, he had his hands up in surrender at the time he was shot. In the immediate aftermath of that shooting, there were few, if any, verified facts that we could use to believe either story. So why would a substantial portion of the community believe one story and not the other? Why would they believe the second story and not the first? Big part of the answer is lack of trust. Lack of trust had primed the community to believe the most negative version of events relayed in media reports. And the result were protests, looting, confrontations between hundreds of officers and thousands of civilians. Michael Brown's death was the trigger, but the underlying cause was a badly fractured police-community relationship, a relationship that had been strained for years, the Department of Justice found, largely because of an adversarial agency culture that emphasized aggressive, enforcement-oriented approach to policing. Imagine what would have happened if the agency had adopted a guardian culture. As Kevin Plank has said, trust is gained in drops, but lost in buckets. Guardian policing allows officers to earn that trust, one drop at a time. So when you have a critical incident like a shooting and officers reach for their bucket to put out that fire, there's something in it. In the aftermath of a shooting, society demands and deserves answers. With trust, we get time to find those answers without creating situations that are dangerous for everyone. It's also that trust that makes officers more effective. By better aligning police priorities with community priorities, guardian policing can result in the type of cooperation that effective policing depends on. So guardian policing can improve safety, can better protect civil rights, and can make officers more effective. How can we make it happen? Well, first, we need to rethink the way that we approach policing in this society. We leave it up to officers to respond to a range of social problems that other government institutions have failed to address. But officers aren't adequately trained or well-equipped to deal effectively with problems like homelessness, poverty, mental illness, alcohol, substance abuse, or school discipline, just to name a few. The solution there isn't just improving the police response, it's improving the delivery of other social services so there's less need for the police to respond. We can also have some changes to make within policing, starting with how officers are recruited and selected. It's not just who engages in policing, though. It's also what we have them do. Agencies may need to rethink their priorities. When agencies encourage or direct officers, for example, to engage in what's been called policing for profit, using enforcement-oriented techniques like traffic tickets or civil asset forfeiture as a source of revenue, they're driving a wedge in police-community relations. There's a reason the sheriff of Nottingham was the bad guy, right? Yeah. Okay. Officer training could also be improved. Most police training has not taken advantage of what we now know about effective adult education, and research-proven best practices, like crisis intervention training, is far from universal. Officers who have confidence in their tactics, in their communication skills, in their physical abilities, are less likely to need to demand compliance, more likely to earn cooperation. And those other attributes I mentioned, respect, dignity, patience, they can be taught. And given how often officers should be using those skills, we should be committing time and resources to teaching them. Perhaps the most important thing, though, is for guardian policing to be supported and reinforced in the community and at all levels of policing. That starts at the top with police chiefs and sheriffs, but it also requires the support of rank-and-file officers and their immediate supervisors. And we can earn that support by building internal organizational cultures that model procedurally just practices, what we might call guardian leadership. An officer who's treated with dignity and respect inside their own agency is far more likely to demonstrate those same behaviors with the individuals they interact with. Those are just a few considerations. There are others I wish I had the time to get into. For now, though, I'd like to ask you again the question I opened with. What does good policing look like? In my view, it looks like guardian policing. Thank you.